Hey, what is going on guys? Rufus Stealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best champions for escaping bronze, silver, and gold for the end of the season. With Season 8 coming to a close here in around 2 months, I thought it would be a good idea to make one of these videos if your main goal is to climb out of bronze or out of silver or gold by the end of the season, then I would recommend playing one of these champions here in this video. So to start it off here, we're going to take a look at a few top lane picks. The first one is going to be Kennen. So Kennen top lane is a really good pick in my opinion for the lower elos, mainly because the most played champions in bronze and silver consist of these bruisers without gap closers, and Kennen can do a really good job at punishing those champions in the laning phase and just getting a lead in lane, having a very easy laning phase, scaling up into the mid to late game, and then being a very good threat in mid to late game team fights. To put this into perspective for you guys, Garen is picked 20% of the time, Darius is picked 10% of the time, and then Nasus is also picked 10% of the time in the lower elos. So that means in 40% of your games, you're going to be going up against one of those top laners, and Kennen is just a great pick to have because you can have a very good laning phase against these top laners, and you're really never going to lose lane as long as you can play Kennen at a decent level. Now for runes on Kennen, you do have a few options. You can go Electrocute, you can go Airy, you can go Phase Rush. It kind of just does come down to personal preference. I do think that if you are looking for more kill pressure in the laning phase, you should be taking Electrocute or Airy on Kennen. Electrocute is the one that's working best right now on him, so that's why I do have it on screen here as an example. So the second pick for top lane is going to be Garen, and this one shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Garen is always going to be a very strong pick for the lower elos, and he's especially good right now in the lower elos. He's got the highest pick rate for any top laner. He's also got the highest win rate for any top laner in the lower elos, so the stats don't lie. Garen is a very solid pick right now. His kit is just really simplistic. It's probably only going to take you 2 or 3 games to get used to Garen and get used to his combos, and you're going to start seeing a lot of success on him very quickly. Now for the build on Garen, I would definitely recommend going for Trinity Force Rush a lot of the time. Unless the enemy team does have a lot of armor stacking champions, you want to go Trinity Force on Garen. It just gives him a lot more solo carry potential than the Black Cleaver. I think a lot of people in the lower elos, they do just default to going Black Cleaver on Garen, but you should not be doing that. Go for Trinity Force, go for Hysterics after that. You can go into tank after you finish those 2 items, and you can deal a lot of damage and also be a really good frontline for your team in the mid to late game. And then lastly here for top lane is going to be Yorick. So Yorick's on here for a few different reasons. He's on here because similar to Kennen, he does really well against a lot of the most picked top laners. He does great against these top laners who don't have a gap closer that can get out of his W. So the most picked champions right now, like Garen, Darius, and Nasus, Yorick can do very well into. He's also a pick that can do pretty well into Teemo, and Teemo's a pick that is also played a lot in the lower elos, and it's a pick that a lot of people do have a harder time against. If you can manage to win lane on Yorick consistently, I think he's one of the strongest picks for the lower elos, because if you can get your Trinity Force and your Hysterics, you can 1v2 in a lot of scenarios, and if you can get yourself into a side lane and start split pushing, your ability to take down towers is extremely good. With your ultimate, with your Sheen Q procs, and then with your Demolish, you're gonna melt towers, and players just aren't really gonna know how to deal with a Yorick split push in the lower elos. So you're going to be able to take multiple towers down a lot of the time. The enemies really aren't even going to react to it, and you can just do a great job at solo carrying games with Yorick if you can get a lead with him in the early game. So if we move into the jungle, Jax is going to be the first pick here. Now Jax in this patch is absolutely tearing up the lower elos and even the higher elos as well right now. Jax is just a really good pick, especially for the lower elos, because when you take a look at the most picked champions right now in the lower elos, you have Master Yi as the most picked jungler, and Jax is a great pick into Master Yi because of his counter strike. You also have champions like Lee Sin, Rengar, Kha'Zix, Xin Zhao. Those are all highly picked champions in the lower elos, and Jax can do a really good job against them. Now for the build on Jax there, I do have Blood Razor as your rush item, but you can also go Cinderhulk on Jax and do very well with that as well. It kind of does come down to personal preference and the game that you're in. If your team is lacking a tank and you need some more beefiness, then I would go for Cinderhulk, but if you are snowballing really hard in the early game, or if you just want to go damage, if your team already has a tank in the top lane and in the support role, then Blood Razor can also be a really good option there on Jax. So number 2 here for the jungle is going to be Rammus. I think that Rammus is overall one of the strongest junglers that you can play for the end of the season here. He got a buff in 8.16 to his W, which makes him even tankier. He also got indirectly buffed in that patch because runes like Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Celerity, these damage runes got nerfed in that patch, so it allows Rammus to get past the early game a little bit easier. He's also, similar to Jax, a very strong pick into a lot of the most picked junglers for the lower elos. You have Master Yi as that most picked jungler. You also have picks like Lee Sin, Kayn, Rengar, and Rammus can do a very good job against those champions. Rammus has been my go-to pick for this patch whenever I'm autofilled jungle in high diamond, and I've been having really good success with the Moby boots into the Cinderhulk and then Righteous Glory. I just feel like that build gives you a ton of solo carry potential. It allows for you, if you do get ahead in the early game, to constantly just be looking for picks and looking to just engage on the enemy. You can tower dive really easily with this setup on Rammus, and you can just make a lot of plays for your team if you do go for this Moby's Righteous Glory build. So for mid lane right now, the 3 mid laners I'm going to recommend are all mid laners that can do very well with Predator. I think that Predator, the rune, if used well, can be super strong in the lower elos because it just allows you to get around the map really quickly in the early game. It can help you roam really well, and then in the mid to late game, it can help you find picks really nicely. So for Vegard here, Vegar's a great pick with the Predator rune because it allows him to look for picks with his E. He doesn't have to go for Ghost as his summoner spell. He can either take Teleport or Ignite. He can run the Predator there, and it just allows him to do a really good job at helping his team find picks in the mid to late game. Once you do get your 2 core items as well on Vegard with your Ludens and your Death Cap, he's just a very easy to execute champion. All you gotta do is pop your Predator. You can run up to that squishy target if you do see them out of position, use your Q, use your ultimate, and they're just gonna die. It's very easy to execute with this champion, and that's why I do think he's a great pick for the lower elos. So number 2 here is going to be Malzahar, and Malz is another great Predator user. Now I didn't talk about this when I was talking about Vegard, but you don't have to be using your Predator rune offensively in the early game. I think one of its best uses, and to why it's really good on champions like Vegard and Malzahar, is it allows them to escape their weaker early game and not lose out on a ton of CS. What you can do is, if you're getting poked out in the laning phase, or if you need to get a base in because you are low on mana, you can try to shove out the wave, base, grab your Predator boots, and then just use your Predator to get back to lane. I do this a lot of the time on Malzahar if I am in a harder lane, and it just allows you to escape that harder lane without really losing out on a ton of gold or a ton of XP in the early game. Now on Malz and Vegard, you are going to be running the Time Warp Tonic, and you're also going to be running the Corrupting Potion and Dark Seal, and this is just going to give you a lot of sustain in the early game. It's going to allow you to very easily survive your little bit of a weaker early game, get to your mid game, get to your mid to late game there, and you're going to have a lot of success on these 2 champions if you do use this setup. And then number 3 here for the mid lane is going to be Annie. Now for Annie, you can either run Predator or Electrocute on her. I think it does come down to the lane that you're in. If you're in a lane to where you do think you have kill pressure at level 6 there with your all-in combo, then I would go for Electrocute. If you're in a lane though to where you're going to lose in the early game, if you're going to get poked out in the early game and you're not going to have a ton of kill pressure, then I would just run the Predator there to help you get back to lane faster and to allow you to look for roams in the early to mid game. And then like Malzahar and like Vegard, she's just a very easy to execute champion, so you're gonna see a lot of success on Annie very early on when you do start to pick her up. Her burst combo, you're never really gonna miss it, so you're always gonna have that consistent damage there in the mid to late game, and even if you do fall behind a little bit in the early game with Annie or even with Malz and Vegard, you're always gonna have some sort of use in the mid to late game because of your point and click abilities. So for AD carry, I'm only going to recommend one AD carry here, and it's going to be Misfortune. I think that for AD carry, Misfortune is just the perfect AD carry pick for the lower elos, and if your main goal is to climb, I really don't think you should be playing anyone else. I think that Misfortune right now is just way above all of the other AD carries as for how strong she is as a pick right now. She's just really good with the Dark Harvest, with the lethality build. Misfortune's early game is really good. She's going to spike very early on into the game there with the Yomus and the Duskblade. She's going to be a very good threat for you once you do start team fighting in the mid to late game. And I just think that overall, if you are playing AD carry right now and you're looking to climb out of the lower elos, then I would just spam Misfortune for the end of this season. And then last but definitely not least here, to round out the video for support, my first pick for support here is going to be Blitzcrank. So I think that Blitzcrank is just always going to be a very solid pick for the lower elos because his ability to just carry games with that one hook in the laning phase is pretty much better than any other support. He's also a great pick for carrying in the lower elos because if you can get ahead in the early game with Blitzcrank, then grab that early Moby boots on Blitz and look to go for a roam mid lane, look to get a kill there. The enemy is probably not going to be warding in the early game. Warding is definitely going to happen a lot less in the lower elos, so roaming on Blitzcrank is going to be a lot more potent, and if you can get some good roams off in the early game, if you can also snowball your lane, then you're going to have a great chance at having really good success on Blitzcrank. And then lastly, to round out the video here is going to be Brand. So Brand, in my opinion, is the best just carry support that you can play right now. He's got a great laning phase. His mid to late game is super strong. He's one of the best team fighting, if not the best team fighting support in the game. And because of the amount of AoE damage that Brand can pump out in mid to late game team fights, a lot of the time you don't even have to rely on your AD carry to carry games. You can be the carry yourself. A lot of the time you're going to deal most damage with Brand in the game as a support, and as long as you can just get your ultimate off in team fights before you die, if you can get your W off and proc your passive, even if you get blown up right away, if you can get a passive proc, if you can use your ultimate, then your chances of winning on Brand are going to be very good. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. Good luck with your climb for the end of the season. These are definitely going to be, in my opinion, the best champions that you can play to climb here, and I would highly recommend just spamming these champions to get some elo for the end of the season. With that being said though, guys, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.